Welcome to the Monday Club, in association with Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. And this week, we're asking if Down can salvage their season against Donegal. I'm Neil Loughran, and this week I'm joined by Cahair and Stefan Campbell's back with us as well. Lads, some weekend, tell me this, did anybody in here tip Meath to win the Leinster title?
I think we all did. No, he's pretty smug.
I'm keeping receipts here. VAT.
He went for Louth. Me and you went for Meath. So yeah. But it's a good job. This is on the subscriber podcast.
I know. Yeah, exactly. But Mad yesterday had a bit of a Super Sunday feel in a way. It wasn't like everybody was following what was going on with Dublin and Wicklow, and then
City and Arsenal.
Van Dijk, 100-minute winner.
Oh,
there we go.
There he goes.
You ever mentioned that in the walk?
No. I would imagine Van Dijk particularly enjoys scoring money against Everton too, like with the whole Pickford thing back from the day. I would think that of all, he seemed to enjoy it anyway. Their first big derby at home, and it was probably a sweet one.
He did not deserve to win that game.
No, were they poor?
Very poor. I've been for a better side.
Did you see Declan Rice after the City game?
Did he?
I saw people on Twitter always saying that he's the most socially aware of when cameras are on him player ever. And the cameras caught him saying this ain't done yet and all, and you're just going, God, it's so done. It is so
he didn't pull them in the huddle and this doesn't slip.
No, exactly. You're lucky. I was gonna say you're lucky Kenny's not here, but actually he's here anyway. But no,
probably the greatest Premier League moment of all time, in fairness.
I think so.
Jared slipping.
Yeah.
Better than Aguero.
Touche. That was a rough day.
The dodgy stream was. We were watching on a dodgy stream on the old internet at home, and my dad was listening to the thing on 5 Live in the kitchen, and I just remember hearing the chair almost tumble when. Obviously, Aguero had scored, and he come running to the living room to us to see the
goal. What stage were you at?
We were about 4 minutes away from the goal. Jekyll hadn't scored yet.
Joey Barton was still stage. Anyway, on the well, I was going to say on the football front, but actually, Cahair might start even with just the hurling that you read on Saturday, just because I was jealous of you, because I've been covered so many Down hurling matches through the years and followed the team. But just a quick word on them, because big Ulster derby and Down obviously now the big dogs in Ulster after two wins in the space of 5 weeks.
Put that to Ronan Sheehan afterwards, and he wasn't biting that they were the best team in Ulster now. But when you beat Antrim twice in 4 weeks. For now, you are the best team in Ulster. What happens down the line? Do they meet again? Can Antrim recover it? Can Down push on from it? Is there another potential meeting in the McDonagh Cup for them somewhere down the line? You don't know, but it was a funny one because Antrim led almost the whole second half by 4 points. It was literally point. 4 points stayed the gap the whole way, but Down were the more impressive team. Even though they were 4 points down, they played the better hurling. They had far more structure and shape about themselves, and Antrim look like a team that want the year to be over. They just cannot wait for this season to end and start afresh next year and see where it goes from there. Because there's no question, when you look at their team sheet, they're not getting anything close to the potential out of themselves. But I was really impressed with Down. I have to say, Keelan Taggart's a baller. As you would say.
Yeah, he is.
And Tom McGrattan was looking pretty sharp for a man only back too.
Did you see Cahair's video work, by the way, Stefan? Talk about this is a guy who smells danger. He knew what was coming. Because obviously Down, I think were they one back at that stage? Whenever that puck out was taken,
they were one back.
One back. So they were kind of in the territory of needing a goal. It was 3 minutes in.
3 minutes into injury time, yeah.
And
you're going to love.
Cahair whipped the phone out and was like, "Here we go." And Ronan Beattie caught it off the Donald.
As soon as the ball left the keeper's hurl, I was on Ronan Beattie's head with the camera, because that's exactly where it was going. And the big palm went up like super glue. And there wasn't much super glue left with the throw ball. But sure, there's 1,000 throws.
They don't count anymore, do they?
Throws
Anyway,
in a hurling match now at this stage. So.
No. On the football front, we have a clearer idea now of how things are on the I keep going to refer to it as the other side of the draw. Is that like, because everybody always talks about the kind of stacked side, but this is the side that obviously we anticipated that Derry were going to be there, and then it was a toss of a coin in some ways of who was going to be lining up against them. Like from Monaghan's perspective, and Derry's as well. Like Monaghan have obviously will come into it much more battle hardened, Stefan, after yesterday, like, because Derry's was, as expected, a bit of a procession. Like it was over by half time, really.
Yeah, I think the two games probably were a bit different in that the first one was a foregone conclusion, if we're being honest, especially on paper. And then fast forward to Sunday, it was a local derby. We were expecting a wee bit more from Cavan. We didn't get the aggression or the physicality that we'd expect from a Cavan team. But if we go back to Saturday night, like Derry done what they had to do. They were professional in that. They got the job done. But I'd still be worried. Like we were chatting here the other week just about the lack of cutting edge up front, and
11 goal chances.
11 goal chances, and only took 2 of them. So obviously, I had picked Loughran Murray, as my one to watch, and look, he came out with
he could have had 4 goals.
Could have 4.
He could have had the 4, and like.
But he looked good. Like
he looked
really
good,
sharp,
and look, the main positive is that they created the chances. Whether their 2 goals is going to be enough against Monaghan remains to be seen. But look, they done what they had to do. I would just like to have seen them a wee bit more in front of goal, a wee bit more creativity, a wee bit more composure. But I liked what I seen from Derry for the most part. Obviously, McGrogan come up the other week, and I thought he looked more comfortable in the half-back line. I think Derry's probably one of the stronger half-back lines in the country.
Yeah.
So that was a good platform for them. It was hard to make out where Glass actually played. If he played the midfielder, if he was just wearing 11, it was hard to tell.
He was kind of nearly playing like sweeping sometimes. He was going.
It looked like he was, on the Antrim kick out, he was nearly at centre half back.
Yeah, he was.
And then on the Derry kick out, I was more midfield. It wasn't out and out centre forward, certainly in terms of any playmaking capacity or anything like that. But he was. Look, I suppose it's like anything. You put him at 11, he's kind of the front line of your defensive press, and it was interesting that when you looked then at Derry's shape when they were defending, and it's you're starting to think, right, so where's the big threat from opposition teams? It's 2 pointers. So you're actually, like Donegal did last year, and I know people talked about Finbar Roarty's role changing this year, but Finbar Roarty played at the Arc last year. That's where he played. He defended the Arc, and it's like teams are actually starting to nearly put their stronger defenders at the head of the arc as opposed to in their full back line sometimes. And so Derry, at times, their middle 3 was Rogers, McAvoy, Glass at the head of the arc. Good luck kicking 2 pointers against that. So you certainly see the way that it's changing teams' mindset and their approach towards defending.
Like obviously we'll look more in depth at Derry Monaghan next week ahead of that semi-final. But is there a concern at all, Cahair, about the 2 points, like Derry's 2 point threat? Compared to, like, we're going to talk about the likes of Mayo and stuff, and Kerry, who we know all about. Is there a worry that way that they maybe that's a bit of a weak spot?
They haven't. I don't know. Like obviously, you're looking at Shane McGuigan, and he's deadly on the frees from them. You're not getting a huge pile of them from play, but you still have players who are potential. Paul Cassidy can kick them. Brent Rogers can kick them. Paddy McGrogan can kick them. Conor Glass can kick them. So are they creating the opportunity? And then they're almost, Derry's attacking balance is almost towards creating goal chances and creating inside shots still. Not unlike Armagh's at the minute. Armagh are taking a lot of their shots from inside and not overly focused on the twos. And Derry are probably pretty similar. They're creating a lot of shots inside. Like they had 47 shots on Saturday, and all the rest of it played bad. I didn't think Derry played that badly.
No,
I just thought that they left a lot on the table. But like, do you really expect on a day like that to be much above 50%? When it is so comfortable for you, you're going to miss. You're going to ease up. You're going to miss chances. I would be more thinking they'll be happy they created 47 shots in an hour's football, like, or 70 minutes football. I thought that was a pretty decent, and they still score 223.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good. It was a
decent
good
return.
Yeah.
Like, so I thought Derry were better than probably a lot of people thought they were on the day.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Look, Monaghan will bring a totally different challenge. It'll just be interesting to see what Monaghan do and how they approach that game, because I enjoyed watching Monaghan yesterday. The first 15 minutes, they were inventive. They've been probably the most inventive team out of the top 10 or 12 over the last 18 months in terms of different game plans and different ways of attacking and playing through the arc when other teams aren't playing through. The kick pass early on, I can't remember, I think it was Steve Mooney kicked the point, but it was a kick pass into an area where Cavan had 8 defenders and 1 Monaghan forward, but nobody does it, and so Cavan were caught completely unaware by the kick pass coming. I think Monaghan are trying things that other teams aren't trying.
But
and it's actually paying off.
Will they try that against Derry though? Like, because you just mentioned,
I'd be surprised just because of the players that, like Conor Laverty. We spoke about like Becker, Forbes, McAvoy's going to be dropping back in there. Is Glass going to be there? We talk about Glass and at the top of that front line as well. I think that maybe takes that away from them slightly. Do that pop pass that we're talking about, that's into isolation, but I couldn't just help but feel that they were allowed to play that way. Like there was zero pressure on Desi Ward on the outside.
That was mad.
Who was just running the show. And look, when I think of Cavan, like we've got it so tight against Cavan over the years, and I'm thinking like Kieran Brady, Dora McGeeney, these boys absolutely hanging out of you. McVitie was heavily strapped up. Yeah, I just think he wasn't right whatsoever, and there was no aggression in that. And I know they pulled it back. We'll probably get into it later, and they pulled it back. But the game was gone from them, and it was just so unlike Cavan, especially in that fixture. It's been hot and heavy over the years, but I think Monaghan are going to need a wee bit more. I don't think they're going to be allowed to play that way. But the most pleasing thing was Conor McCarthy got minutes.
Killian Avell.
He looked very lean.
He did.
They're two massive players for them. So I think they're going to need
Ryan Wiley's to come back. Gary Mohan, I think.
Gary Mohan wasn't even tagged yesterday. I saw him walking about the warm up.
So, like, when you think of it, when you think of the doom and gloom that followed Monaghan after the league, but I always had a sense that like there was still reasons for them to be optimistic coming.
Yeah, look, I mean, league's league. Like nobody's going to remember league at the end of the year. I suppose if you compare it to Division 2, look what's happened in Meath, after promotion. Now they're out of the Ulster Championship, and they were tipped by the experts. But it just goes to show how things can turn in a short space of time. I do feel Monaghan's going to need them 2 or 3 players back in to pose Derry a huge threat.
They'll probably try, like they look like a team that in the first 15 minutes that had carried no baggage from the league into the championship whatsoever. As if this is a completely fresh, and it looked like they were super well prepared for the way that Cavan were going to defend and the shape that Cavan were going to defend in, and they played in the pockets that they knew Cavan were going to give them. You look at those kick passes early on, there's nothing about it that's disorganised. There's nothing to chance in it. The players are in pockets where they know there's going to be space to kick the ball into, so they obviously had prepared really well for that. And I think you go back to down last year, you go back to Monaghan's couple of games last year as well. I think what they'll try to do with Derry is I think they will try and play through the arc, but in a point of coming in to go out again. Yeah. They'll try and pop the ball in to draw Derry's 3 or 4 men to the ball, thinking they'll get the turnover to go straight back out and create the shot. And it's probably tricky to deal with, because if you're defending inside the arc and you don't step into it, they kick the score. If you're defending inside the arc and they step into it and they're aware enough to pop it back out, you've left a 2 potentially. So it's been a game plan that has served them pretty well so far. Like I've been impressed enough by them there yesterday. For in the 40 minutes up until they probably stopped, they were so comfortable, as in the gap never really closed for a long time, and it felt like the game was over. Now the goal chances they leaked later on.
When you think of the goal chances Derry created,
you would be worried about that. But then in the first 40 minutes, they weren't really that troubled at all. Cavan didn't have any ball really to trouble them with either. And McVitie, you talk about he was playing a role where he couldn't then affect the game. He was playing so high up that, and Cavan didn't have any ball to service him with and couldn't get him involved in it. And O'Toole's very good as well on him, so that helps too. So it's not like it's not in any way a gimme for Derry. It's not.
No, we'll have, as I say, we'll probably look a wee bit more in depth at that next week, because we're going to focus now. Well, we're going to talk about Down Donegal, but I suppose for context purposes, we have
you
to
a bucket for your tears
we
there
have
for
to
the weekend.
address the elephant in the room, which is Westmeath's victory over Meath in the Leinster quarter final yesterday, which was the result that all Down supporters would have been fearing after the league. And so obviously Westmeath go on now. They play Kildare in the semi-final, but if Westmeath reach the Leinster final, then it means Down have to then reach the Ulster final, which is handy. If you're just playing just Donegal and Armagh, like,
So Fermanagh.
And Fermanagh, yeah. So it's I'd say even from a morale perspective, Stefan, I don't know, that'd be a bit of a sucker punch as they're preparing for Donegal next weekend.
Absolutely, because obviously it was only 2 weeks ago they thought they got the job done. That was their place, solidified, I suppose, and competing for Sam, and they dogged it out that day, extra time, and I'm sure they maybe celebrated that win that evening, and nobody was expecting that result in Leinster. So fair play to Westmeath, but unfortunately it just leaves Down in a difficult position where they're going to have to cause a few upsets to retain their spot.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't know, Cara, how you think it changes. I can't imagine it does. It's not going to change their approach, because they'll have been building towards this Donegal game for a long time beyond this anyway. Where they would have been putting a huge importance on Donegal. But do you think does what happened at the weekend, did it have any bearing on?
It does. It probably does. It creates a desperation thing. It's their only way into it now. They were probably, you're right.
Unless Kildare win.
Yeah, and that's out of their hands. Yeah. That's gone for them now, and you probably would expect Westmeath to go to the Leinster final from here, and that leaves it that it's in Down's own pause from there. And you're right, like obviously they would have had focus on Donegal from a long way out and wanting to cause an upset there, but it does change the dynamic of it a wee bit for them, but it doesn't change it for Donegal, I suppose, how they approach it. So in some ways could it be a good thing for Down in the regard of getting the performance and maybe the shock out of themselves, sharpening their focus. Like, this is, if we want to play Sam Maguire football this summer, this is the only way we're going to do it now, lads.
And I think just that potential upset in Dublin and Wicklow as well, along with that Westmeath victory, like, that's Geezer and Jim won't have to say too much this week.
You think Donegal will have been looking at that going, okay?
Yeah, so if Wicklow can take Dublin, to injury time and almost steal that, that's it. Just
like even Meath, you know what I mean? Like, we joked, like, but everybody was post league. Everybody was talking about Meath as All Ireland outsiders, and maybe they still will be. You know what I mean? But it's just when you see a result like that and the nature of it. You know what I mean? It was like 14 or something.
You just 10-point game one stage.
Yeah.
Obviously it wasn't shown live, but we can only go off by reports and the highlights, etc. But they were good value for the win by all accounts. But just on the Donegal thing, I can't see Jim looking past them, and I do fear for Darren the weekend. But
see, when you go into a game, if you've experience of this, Stefan, like whenever like Donegal, whenever everybody is talking about the next game, like you have been in this position, and I know that the standard line is always trotted out by players and management of one game at a time, and we never talked about Armagh or anything. We never talked about Donegal. Like, what is the reality? Or maybe that is the reality. But say going into a game like this, will Donegal be looking like how much would they have been looking to Armagh, do you think, or would they have at all?
No, it probably just goes down to experience. Probably 10 years ago you might have had an Armagh team, more specifically players. Maybe looking beyond a game with Donegal, these two guys in charge, like Jim's going for 3 in a row. What did you report last week? It's only 3 teams ever done it.
That's since World War II.
So this, we know how much Jim appreciates and rates the Ulster Championship, and now he's going for 3 in a row. There's not a chance them Donegal players have seen a clip of Armagh since they met, in the league. It's just too important to them. Same with Geezer. It wasn't too long ago Armagh went to Brewster and got turned over. So there's a lot. There's 9 or 10 players still involved with Armagh. Unfortunately, there's none left for Fermanagh, and I know that them players you don't forget days like that. So look, we're trying to build the Ulster Championship up, but I don't see any maybe upsets coming this weekend.
Yeah, because of that. Cahair, obviously 12 months ago down, met Donegal in Clonus in the Ulster semi-final. It was a strange sort of a game. They came in with a very deliberate game plan that day to, I don't know if frustrate Donegal is the right term, but they held possession a lot. They seemed to rely on like Eugene Brannigan punching holes the odd time, and like they probably got quite a lot right on the day, but being there, it just always felt like Donegal were in, had a couple more gears if they were ever needed.
It's funny, because as you know, there's something wrong with me. I watched it back on Saturday evening there last year. It was actually a line Philly McMahon said after half an hour, this doesn't feel like it's a 7-point game. And when you actually looked at the game, Down did so much right. Down, like we talk about the big men in the middle four for Donegal, and Down not having them and their struggle that they're going to have on kickouts. 10 out of 12 on their own kickouts in the first half. Down were last year, taking massive risks. Ronan Burns, but he's so good at it. they were still 6 out of 9 in the second half as well. So they got so much possession. They got almost as many shots as Donegal did. They actually got 15 shots in the second half to Donegal's 8. So you're looking at a template where how do we say Down can trouble Donegal? The template's there. There it is. You did it last year, and you did it in a way that the scoreline didn't reflect.
So is it just an efficiency issue then when it comes down to that, or is it the shots? You're talking about those shots. What were they?
It was a 2-point issue, really. Donegal kicked 2-pointers and Down didn't until it was too late, and they just allowed the gap to grow to a point where, as you say, it felt like it was because it was always 7 points or 6 points or 5. It always felt like Donegal were in control of the game. But in terms of the flow of the game and how the game was going, Down had a lot of control of it and controlled a lot of elements of it, but they just couldn't get that reflected on the scoreboard. And one of the key things is that, obviously Owen Murdoch's a massive player for Down. He didn't have a shot until the 61st minute last year. He only had 2 in total. One was off his right foot. And Donegal kind of actually broke their own zonal system last year to just have Michael Langan tag him. Michael Langan just went everywhere after him. Just had no interest in the ball for 70 minutes and just dogged Owen Murdoch. And you maybe know this should be better, but I'm looking at Murdoch now. So if he gets the same treatment again this weekend, I would like him to engage more physically. I thought he almost allowed Langan to tag him in the sense of, just standing off and trying to time a run, as opposed to nearly over-engaging Langan and making the referee see it and testing Langan a wee bit and almost making him foul you or making him put hands on you, and then you can say to the linesman, this man, and then he's on a booking. And I would want a wee bit more from Murdoch in that regard if that happens again on Sunday or Saturday. Sorry,
I don't know if he has the personality, to engage in that type of stuff. Knowing him as a player, I don't know him off the field, but the word is that he's a quiet lad in general. So I don't know if he's going to maybe poke that bear in Langan if they do go with the same matchup. But it would be a smart move. It would be they're going to rely on a lot of 2-point kicks from Hebron, Guinness, these boys, Murdoch as well. Would the right thing be to try and, if Donegal come man to man around New York, do they try and buy frees? Do you know what I mean? That could be the way into the game. I think Down's going to struggle. I think they're over-reliant on Murdoch, who is going to have his hands full. Obviously they come out on top last year. They now have the big 5, with McFadden, McGonigal, McGee, Langan. So obviously Reece Dorsch are going to be huge. They're probably going to be going after the breaks. That's probably Laverty's sole focus this week, just trying to get the hands on ball. I just think with Hebron, he's probably go to be up against McCole, and he kicked 8 points last year.
Yeah.
So he'd a big impact. I just think this Donegal team have too many ready-made matchups.
I think when you saw even like against Wexford, even 3 weeks ago or whatever, like if it's simplistic, but if you do take those guys like in the second half, Murdoch didn't feature really. Guinness found it difficult, Havern, and then Kieran McGeeney, who's playing in a more advanced role, and all of a sudden Down become quite, there's a lack of inspiration there.
Yeah,
maybe
they were very poor that day. They looked like they were going to cruise away from Wexford, and how often do we see it? Like, we're talking about it every week. Armagh against Tyrone last week, 6 or 7-1 up. Westmeath yesterday, 10 points up. I think I go back to 2. It's just teams subconsciously go away from what got them that lead, and just allow teams back in, and that's what seemed to happen in Croke Park in the Division 3 final. And look, I think Down are Division 2 team, but they just flat out to deceive at times. We don't know where we're going to get the scores from outside of the 3 that we've mentioned. And Guinness wouldn't be a 70% man. He can blow hot and cold as well. I think he came out of the league final with man of the match also.
He did,
but he was probably 0 from 4 in his first 4 shots. So
the second half, he was,
it's difficult. I don't think the game's going to be as close as last year. I just think the restarts are going to be key. Donegal seem to have that nailed down right now. We've seen what they've done to Cahair in a 13-point deficit in Division 1.
Do they stick with Mulroney? Like, there's a lot of talk that Patton's back and ready to go, like, but obviously he hasn't played through the league.
I'd stick with him. I'd be
hard to drop him. Like, if you treat the goalkeeping position the way you treat the other 14 on form, you can't drop him. You're not dropping any of the outfield players who are playing well for somebody who might play, who has played well in the past, but they're playing better at the minute. Like, it's Mulroney's position at the minute till he loses it, I think. Now there might come a day down the line, only for him losing it might just be 5% off someday. It wouldn't take much maybe to lose it.
Yeah.
But at the minute he hasn't lost it, and I can't see him not starting this weekend. But even you're talking about, it's funny because everybody talks about, so you have Havern, you have Guinness, you have McAvoy, and you have Murdoch in terms of 2-point threat, in terms of making things happen for Down so much of the time. But Donegal were so aware of that last year as well, and Down still managed to create. Like, Daniel Guinness only had 2 shots last year as well. McAvoy only had 2 as well, I think. McAvoy, where's he at? Yeah, no, he had 2 shots as well. So, Donegal were keenly aware of those threats and did shut them down in a massive way last year, and yet still Down's numbers through the game tell you that they still create a lot of shots, a lot of chances. Like Shea Miller's goal chance towards the end. Now, Donegal missed goal chances as well. Burns had made a couple of brilliant saves at the same time, so the game could have been further away from them as
John
much
McGeough
as
had a goal chance early in the game. Didn't John McGeough? There was a goal chance early in the game.
There was a goal chance at 4-4, where he fisted it across the net and he fisted it too high. And it trickled out wide. But
I suppose I'm just thinking of and I'd be the first to kind of go, even the Shea Miller one you're talking about. At the time, it didn't feel like a seismic kind of thing, because it just felt like, okay, I think I would have brought it back to 4, would it have, or 3 or 4 maybe. Yeah. But Donegal were always there. But then you look at the Westmeath game yesterday, and Westmeath come out and hammer Meath completely with the goals and stuff, and that momentum then is very hard to reverse. So I'm wondering, Down, you're kind of saying, Cahair, that they might not deviate too much from what they did last year, just try and do it better. Is that what you're saying, or do you see any kind of the way that they might mix it up, or what do you see?
Obviously the templates are from last year, but more recently I'd be worried about how long they went without a score against Wexford. It was 26-27 minutes. If the same was to occur again, they won't see the 40th minute.
Was that, though, when you go back to that day, was a wild lot of that the pressure? I felt like that was a huge pressure game for Down. That it wasn't because of what it was a free shot for Wexford in some ways, But even this weekend, like people aren't expecting Down to beat Donegal, whereas they expected them to beat Wexford,
Yeah.
and they were in a position in the first half and they missed a penalty. You know, they should have been out the gate, and then they didn't kill Wexford off. And the more that grew, the more pressure that came on them. And actually, like Down controlled the last 5 minutes when it was really, really sticky wicket. They actually did really well in those last 5 minutes to dig themselves out of the hole and get extra time out of it, and probably should have won it normal time. But I just wonder, was that a pressure thing that day? It was just felt like the world was caving in on top of them. You can almost feel
It was totally going away.
we're going to lose. We're going to lose our Sam Maguire status here to Wexford lads. You know, and you can feel that. Whereas that doesn't exist for them this weekend, I don't think.
No, and to be fair, they have been in that position at different times in the last couple of years since Conor Laverty came in, and always found it. Like, even, you know, you're talking about that pressure. Even in the first league game this year at home to Clare, I think they were down pretty early, or, you know, down, you know, at half time, and late on possibly as well. And if they'd lost that, then all of a sudden the promotion chase it looks like a different thing. So yeah, it's I guess it's just what they can do that's different. Like, is there anything you see? Like, we talked before, Cahair, about whether you know, it's maybe you're going back now a couple of years probably since they would have tried Murdoch at full forward, like in they tried that in the Touching Cup final against Meath and stuff, and he just ends up, you know, peripheral.
He's somebody that he's better facing the game, I think.
100%. Look, I don't think he's huge in stature, but he is obviously good in the air. He uses his body well. He's just up against it this week, because I know, talking from a lot of Down people, that they're always worried about the lack of size. They've been searching for the 6'4", 6'5" midfielder for 5 or 6 years, and they just can't get one in the county. And Owen's not huge, but what he'll make up for, and, you know, obviously fight, he'll drive them forward. It's just getting their hands in. Will they get enough hands in primary possession, and have they got enough? Can they put the fires out up top?
But like I've said it before, I rate him so highly. I think they have a goalkeeper who counteracts a lot of that. Like like it was still a much bigger Donegal team than it was a Down team last year, and he was 16 out of 21 on his kickouts over the game. Like, that's class. Yes, that's some return. And I just see that the problem, the puzzle that they're faced with this weekend isn't that much different.
Well, like every team Down play, or generally, you know, like it was the same. It was the same against Louth in Newry last year, and again, Burns was brilliant that night, and probably against Monaghan as well, I think, in Galway. You know, every team Down play, they generally
are smaller
at that level. They're in this conundrum every time.
Yeah, and they're good at, you know, so they'll try and get it away short, but when they have to go to an overload, or they have to go to a long kick out, they're very good at getting numbers round, and they're very good at making sure it comes down out of the air and winning the second ball, as opposed to, you know, relying on the first ball in the air and catching it clean. They'll make sure it comes down, and they'll make sure that their body's committed to it. So I think that's an area of their game that they're far better at than people give them credit for. The one thing that really stood out to me, and the one big worry I would have for them, is watching the game back last year, is how far off Donegal were in terms of their own brilliance on the ball. The number of times that Donegal gave the ball away in uncontested positions, or trying, you know, really uncharacteristic errors that they made in that game. And like we saw the stat about not giving the ball away in the league final at all, pretty much. And they're so good in possession that if they bring that level of control to when they have the ball, you would feel that they will hurt Down a wee bit more than they did as well. So that's where I actually struggle then to make the argument for Down. I think Donegal will be better. I think Down's level where they were at last year, it wouldn't be wild far away from winning this game. But I think Donegal's level will go up a wee bit, and I think that'll take the game away from them.
Okay. On Saturday then, Fermanagh against Armagh, Stefan. Like, again, Fermanagh, there'll not be too many giving Fermanagh a huge chance here. But you mentioned the history, I suppose, the recent history, and as Cahair mentioned, was it 03, 04, was it? And the couple of Dennis Hollywood goals back in 96 or something. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, Fermanagh were winning that day, and he got a couple. You know, so. But like, you can't rely on history for these kind of things, and the reality of where both counties are. Like Fermanagh struggled through the league, albeit improved a bit towards the end. But is there anything like what's the mood music about Armagh? You know, going into this game, Stefan?
I think because they were almost caught in the last round. They were seemed to be cruising for a short spell, maybe the first 7 or 10 minutes, and then they took the foot off the gas. That would have irked Geezer so much. You know, he's obsessed with when you get on top, just don't stray from what's working. And it looked like some of them Armagh players just decided that they wanted in on the act. You know, it was too comfortable for them. So that's why I fear for Fermanagh this week, because he would have got them back on the training ground. I'd say he would have worked them pretty hard just to humble them a bit. But Geezer will be going solely after performance this week. Like, I don't know how often Fermanagh is going to get mentioned. He'll just be going after that performance. And what that'll look like is, look, there'll obviously be respect, but there's going to be a serious appetite for aggression. Do you know what I mean? On work rate, because that's what they lacked in that period. The reports, obviously, that when we analysed the game, Tyrone actually got on top of Armagh. They seemed to be outworking them in that second half, and that would have really annoyed him. So there's going to be a huge reaction, I think, this week.
You think Fermanagh might pay for?
I think Fermanagh might pay. Look, if we make a case for them, look, 2018 wasn't that long ago. We've already touched on there's no players remaining, so I don't think any of them players have got a feel for beating Armagh. But what they have is the manager, Declan Bonner, and Paul Brannan, who have beaten Armagh on more than one occasion. So no
love lost there.
There's no love lost there. Declan Bonner seems to have, you know, he's won everywhere he's went. He's won medals. He's won championships. Look, they've still got a bit of talent. Oisin Kellan, you know, bit of pace. Garvin Jones still floating about. Look, they've lost a lot of quality, and Declan Bonner hasn't been, you know, too shy in admitting that. It's at home for a start. So I think being at home, having Declan Bonner and Paul Brannan with the experience, they're going to be relaying certain messages to that team. They need Armagh to be off their game. They need Armagh to have another off day, like they done against Tyrone. They need to take it down the stretch, and hopefully Brewster can, you know,
ignite something for them.
Something, and hopefully Armagh. Sorry, I'll change that. Fermanagh will hope that Armagh do feel the pace of it. Maybe feel the nerves kick in if it goes down the stretch. But I think that's all I have really in terms of making the case for Fermanagh. You know, the experience on the line, the home support. The 3 or 4 players is Darren McGurn. Is he going to be fit?
He should be.
He's huge for them. You know, he's
playing well too. Well, reports like, and they're a pretty big side. They're in the middle 8. They're pretty big. You know, they're pretty decent on their own kickouts as well in terms of then getting possession. You have McDade and you have McGurn and you have McGullion and those lads, and they're going to get their hands on a fair wee bit of ball. And it's like anything, if you can get your hands on the ball now, you can get shots, and if you can get shots, you can get scored. And it's like so. But it's a big struggle. You're talking about they don't have anything left from 2018, but it feels like this is a team that's still about 2 or 3 years away from its sweet spot. Obviously, St Michael's won in the Hogan, and that team has produced a fair bit. You know, off one school team that has brought a fair wee bit through for Fermanagh, which they need, but they're not at their peak years yet, and they're kind of just in between. I think. Like going to Division 4 is disastrous for them. I think it almost wipes out a year for them in terms of learning and developing. They did not need that at all. And if they'd have stayed in Division 3 next year, I still think there's improvement in them to come. You look at their age profile, like they're not an old team in the slightest. Like they've lots and lots in front of them, but making a case for them.
Because in the years previous to that, yeah, you're right. Like they were top Division 3, bottom Division 2 team.
And they're a county that for all the numbers and resources that they have, they've managed to achieve a level of competitiveness over the last 25 years that is way above what you look at in terms of the resources they have, where they should be to play the top end of Division 2 football, almost go up at one stage to play. To have good championship ones, to beat Monaghan in that semi-final, reach the Ulster final, that's probably above the resources that they have, and they've always maintained a level of competitiveness. And you just had awful bother with them when they were under Rory Gallagher. Like I remember being at a game up in Crossmaglen. Did they beat just by a point, or you just beat them by a point? It was very close.
I think it was a draw, actually.
It was a draw, was it that day? And they beat us in the championship game down there, the league final as well. So they're they're probably not maximising themselves at the minute. That's that's where they're at. They're probably to drop to Division 4. Their last 3 games in the league, they showed signs of improvement and showed signs that they have something to offer at the weekend, but you can't see it being enough to beat Armagh.
No, and I know down in Armagh are at different levels, but I suppose they can take some comfort from the fact that they should have beat down last year in Ulster. They were really dominant in the second half. I just know, talking to a few people around Fermanagh ahead of this game, there's concerns about a lot of areas about Armagh. Obviously the athleticism that Armagh have, the depth that Armagh have, worries that beyond Johnny Cassidy, who's gonna match the pace of an Oisín Connolly or a Darren McMullen, whether Armagh hold Oisín O'Neill and Turbo in reserve.
It's funny. You said something in here about 6 weeks ago about when you would have got starts, it would have been against a Fermanagh or an Antrim, and I was thinking that I think Oisín O'Neill start that this weekend.
I think the both of them might play, because down the line, if Geezer's plan is to hold them both back for the bigger games, there still might be an injury picked up down the line. Somebody might lose form, so they might have to play one of them from the start, or 2 of them. So now I think the weekend is the ideal scenario to get the 50, 60 minutes into their legs, and see what they can do. Now they will feel more pressure to deliver this week than they would have coming on against Tyrone last week. It's just the way it works, because that's their shot to get back in. And it's funny when you're just coming off that bench there. I was chatting to a couple of them, and what do you do? You can't do much, because if you come in, you perform. That's your role. And if you come in, you don't perform, but you're not getting in from the start anyway. So if they do get the nod this week, there will be a bit of pressure on them to deliver. Because I know, I felt a similar feeling, but Fermanagh, they're going to need maybe a season's best, and they're going to need Armagh to drop off. They're going to need to just limit them unforced errors, because if you go back to that, they gifted me my last championship goal. Remember that Conor Turpin turnover?
Yes, I do.
Down in Ireland and popped it over. So they need everything to go right.
And is that a way of Armagh then keeping their performance level up, in terms of, so we're giving Oisín O'Neill and we're giving Turpin these up, that means that they're going to bring a level, and that means that they're going to bring the team's level up, as opposed to if you go with the same 15, giving those players those opportunities in this game, those players are desperate to grasp them, and that brings the level up then.
And without taking the result for granted, look what's potentially coming next. So them two players, and I know you were fighting your case more so than me there, but them 2 players will be thinking Donegal as well. Do you know, at the back of their mind maybe? If they get over Fermanagh, they want the starting spot. Obviously, we all want to play games, but there'll just be a wee bit more pressure on them to deliver this week. Now, they might not play them. They might hold them both back, because they're working quite well together. So that might be the road for the year. But they're going to need curveballs the further we delve into the season. So I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them play.
See, just on Oisín O'Neill before we move on. He was one of the, like yourself, one of the big leaders in the kind of the B team, or if you want to call it that, in the 2024 season. And one of the more humble characters, again, this is, I was talking to Darren McMullen a few weeks ago, and he referenced Oisín and yourself a good lot, about making sure that nobody kind of was throwing the head up about not starting and so forth. But see now, like when you see obviously like Kieran McGeeney has come in there and staked his claim and stuff like knowing Oisin O'Neill as you do and the impact that he made the last time, would there not be a big frustration given that Armagh are missing guys in the forward division that he's not?
Absolutely.
starting?
Look, I'd say he's highly frustrated, because after the retirees, he was probably thinking, I can get this number 14, I can get this number 15. He can play midfield as well. He was probably thinking, there's bodies missing out around there too.
Like there's no Rain, no Mournemen at the minute.
So
I mean, you're looking at height and size in the
yeah,
middle.
he's perfect. He can tick a lot of boxes. So I'd say he's highly frustrated. But he's grown into a player where he understands the game. He's a deep thinker about the game first and foremost, and he's good enough and he has enough awareness to put that to the side if he feels, and I know he feels he should be playing, but he's with the experience he's learned to put that to the side. We've seen the impact he had in 24, which is probably understated. He was able to turn what Galway player was it again, turning the block. He got that, he was clawing at the arm, for the Conroy for the block, and then he basically kicked the winner in the All-Ireland final, and that's sort of the stuff, that tackle. You don't really associate that with Oisin O'Neill or me or maybe anyone that plays higher up the field, but he's just grown into a selfless player. And look, I suppose it was all dribbling us, under Geezer anyway. But to go back to your question, yes, I think he'll be highly frustrated. He'll be at a high level this week in training to make sure he gets that.
Chewing at the lead to get on it.
Chomping at the bit. And because in his head, if he gets 70 minutes, even 50, 60 minutes to prove his point this week, look, that takes him into Tuesday night. Will he be in the probables? Do you know what I mean? And then that's where you build that. But I'm looking forward to seeing him how he plays, because the two of them haven't played. The two of them haven't started a game since round 3.
Because I asked McGeeney about him after the Tyrone game about sort of dealing with breaking this news to him in a weekly bit, and that's where he said you were in his top 3 forwards, and he sort of had a smile on his face when he said it. He said, Sippy was in their top 3 forwards, but it was about winning the game. It wasn't about blowing a team away, and Tony, you had to win the game. You had to have a strategy for finishing the game out as well. And it almost feels like I'm funny saying this to you, but it feels like Oisin O'Neill is suffering for you retiring, because he has now got your role. He is now cast in the position where he's going to be the man that's going to come in for the last 25 minutes and see this thing over the line.
Talk to him to replace me. No, look, because I know Oisin not well, like he's a smart guy. He's a deep thinker, as I say. What he's paying for is, because he's such a huge kicker of the ball, it doesn't really matter what half he. If you were to,
I know
we generally associate the kickers with the breeze.
Absolutely.
Because he's such a big kicker, he can kick through the breeze. Whereas a lot of us boys might have to turn it in their running game and get inside the actual D, maybe towards the 21. He can kick a ball 40, 45 yards in this stiff breeze, and I think that's going against him too, because it genuinely doesn't matter what half he plays. He's got his.
If he was that big a kicker, he wouldn't have had to steal 15 yards in that free last week.
Give him a breather. Give him a break.
Actually, it was the fact that the Tyrone players were like at Noel Mooney. Like, look, you didn't mark it. He's going to steal the yards. And Noel Mooney just went, nah. And then
That's just smart.
He stole. I know.
That's just smart. No.
But he stole. He did steal a few. Oh, you would do it yourself, like.
No, he's a good lad, super player, and look, hopefully he gets back in, but I just feel like when Division 1 teams come down the line, the Donegals and
Maybe held
back. He may be held back.
Okay, well, look, we're going to finish up by taking a quick look at what is probably the biggest game, most competitive on paper anyway, certainly Mayo and Roscommon and Connacht. We did speak about both these counties in the subscriber podcast a couple of weeks ago, but worth revisiting, I suppose, Cahair, because again we can't take anything, I guess, from the league game
Nothing
a month ago. Like both of them were, there was a serious amount of shadow boxing there, like half teams, and obviously Mayo ran away with it that day. But what's your feeling going into this one on Sunday?
Yeah, well, look, my feeling has been Mayo from the start. My feeling was Meath and Leinster. So, I just think the Cahair thing as well, the Andy Moran factor. I feel if you were in Cahair this weekend, I feel like the place would be buzzing for in a way that it probably hasn't been for a few years. Like a genuine excitement about, right, let's see.
Because it had kind of dropped off.
It had. Like, there's no doubt. Like they not falling in love, but the support had dipped, and even the atmosphere at the games, it was kind of like there was no sense of belief that Mayo were really going anywhere for a year or two there. So it was nearly like you know that flatness that kicks in then. So I feel there'll be a real buzz back in the place, and then I think there'll be a buzz from the Roscommon side as well. They'll want to see what can they do in a big championship game as well. I think it could be a brilliant game. It could be a brilliant game this weekend because both teams want to play ball. They both want to score. They both want to go after. And it's the biggest change in Mayo, and it's why the crowd is energised because they're seeing that the team is playing in a different way. And they're going after big scores and they're kicking 2-pointers and you have all that. So, it's a very difficult game to call because they both have kind of similar strengths. And then it comes down again. Like we go back, for all of that, you keep coming back to. So who can get the ball in their hands? Who can get it in their hands at midfield to get out? I've always liked Rob Henley. I've always felt he got a bit of a raw deal at times, and he was behind David Clark at times as well. But I would trust him to find ways out more and maybe just tip the wee balance possession wise in Mayo's favour. And I think if they tip the balance in their favour, that way they'll win the game. The Dara Craig factor now, as we speak, he's still suspended. I don't know that he will be. Don't know that he'll still be suspended come the weekend. It looked innocuous enough. It looked like a huge pile. So I wouldn't rule out him playing. And again, that twists it back again, turns the narrative. And the Mayo have enough man markers to go round on the Roscommon forwards. You're into all that, so
that's the concern from a Mayo perspective, isn't it, Stefan? Like when you look at obviously the huge scoring that they did through the league and the top 2-point scorers in the country. I think that 16 shots, 16 2-point efforts in the first half against London. I know there was blowing a gale and you would, but at the same time it shows the ambition. But it's at the other end, maybe we saw it a wee bit against Kerry to a degree, but outside of Jack Coyne and stuff, there's not the real natural defenders that you would actually have associated with Mayo. Like when
I do like the mould of Callanan.
He's
turned into a 6. I think I actually might have marked him on his debut. He's not as filled out as he is now, but is he in the mould of Keegan there at the minute? Just driving forward, where I think he's tailor-made for Andy Smith. I think he could put
him on the back foot.
Yeah, we tended to put Joey McIlroy and Andy Smith, and as good as he is and as much of a goal threat as he is, if you can get somebody to match him physically, that I think that's the key element too.
Because he's not going to probably burn you around the outside.
He's not going to burn you around the outside, okay. And I've seen glimpses of him in New York too, and I know it's a wee bit like they're in New York, basically a holiday for them, and he was well marshalled in that game. So was Diarmuid Murtagh, to be fair. It was obviously the sporting cast stepped up. And
you didn't get a trip out to New York?
Didn't know. No,
it's always next year.
Funny, you
need to renegotiate the terms.
Once I heard McBrady was still on the phone, but he's guaranteed me that they're for next year.
Lovely.
Looks like they're pulling them out of the championship, so that was set up too. No, back to the game. Look, it's going to be a classic. I think it's set up to go to the wire. I think they're different teams in that Mayo are obsessed with 2-pointer. They're obsessed with kicking the ball, and they try and keep the game as fast.
But I wonder, are they obsessed with those things? This is my thing with Mayo. I think they've spent the league experimenting, and they've spent the league building a 2-point threat.
I do agree.
But I think that come the summer you'll see a different version of them. I think they'll not be as obsessed with the twos. And then they're nearly laying a trap.
Smart for that.
I think so too.
I agree with you.
I think they're laying a trap nearly we're going to go out after twos, and what they're actually going to do is they're going to hit you in behind and they're going to score goals against you because you're so obsessed with thinking they're going to score twos.
And the only players I really seen that were stepping inside even against London was Ran O'Donoghue, and then Tommy Conroy and a wee bit of a threat. We'll probably go into the depth a wee bit later. I would have liked to have seen more of that because look, it was basically a training match for them, and if they were practicing those things that we think they are, that more controlled, composed attack, that would have been the ideal because it was a no-win for them anyway. If they'd won by 30 points, it wasn't enough. And if it was a tight game, Mayo were in trouble here going into Roscommon. I would just like to have seen more imagination from them, creativity. But look, if they've been holding that back, the only worry is then if all that's been happening on the training field,
can
how
you
do you replicate
translate
that in
it?
the
Can you
championship? So that's
translate
the
it,
concern. I think Roscommon, obviously, we spoke about the league game. It was more shadow boxing, right? But there was a serious amount of scores. Like Paul Toy hit a goal, O'Shea 1-2, McHale hit 3, Flynn hit 3, Ran O'Donoghue 1-4, and Jack Coney 1-2, Kearney 1-2. That was without, I think, 2 of their back 6. They left Diarmuid Murda, and the Smith, and had one other player there that never got minutes at all. So I mentioned a few weeks ago, Dowd probably the more comfortable with the squad, and they seemed to use a lot more players. They played a faster game, and look, I know hopefully they're working on that in the background. This game could go to the wire because I think Mayo were the better team. I think they're the better squad depth. But I think Roscommon are maybe better just controlling the ball, which lends itself to a contrasting game.
If they try to control it, then what way do Mayo respond to the energy of Castlebar? Do they go and press out a wee bit? Do they go and engage it higher out the field? Like you saw, I know it's probably different. You saw Derry really press Antrim high at the weekend, but I do think there's a bit of that where you feel you're stronger than let's go and hem them. Let's go and just take the ball off them and get it back. I don't know that Mayo and Roscommon would look at each other in that way and take that chance. And I think actually I've talked myself out of that idea now because I think Mayo would be too scared of what Roscommon would do if they're confident. If they're confident. The amount of times I hit that microphone.
Why are you apologising to a microphone?
I hit it at least once every week. The idea of stepping out and then getting caught and the line broken, and then you're in trouble. Maybe they don't go after that, but it'll just be interesting. I'm savagely looking forward to that game. I think it has all the makings of being one of the best games of the summer.
Yeah. Here's hoping. Well, I think that's going to do us for today anyway, guys. Cahair O'Kane and Stefan Campbell, thanks very much for joining us. We'll hopefully see you in another few weeks, maybe, Stefan.
No problem.
All being well. And thank you as always to our sponsors, Find Insurance NI, your local commercial insurance broker. That concludes this week's episode of the Monday Club. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen, and we will be back for more next week.